Welcome to Subscription Prescription, the podcast where you get the information you need to scale your subscription program. All right, welcome to a special edition of Subscription Prescription. This is special for a couple reasons. One, I'm on here with my really good friend, Andriy Rudnyk. Two, this is coming to you at an off normal time for Subscription Prescription. It's going to be a special release. But three is the topic we're going to cover. Today, we're going to be diving into subscription platforms and migrations. If you have been living under a rock in Shopify for the last few years, then maybe you don't know about this. But if you are in subscriptions or know anyone offering subscriptions, or if you're on Twitter or anything, you have probably seen an amazing discussion and discourse around which app should I choose? So that's what we're going to dive into today. We're going to try to wrap our arms around this 40 plus app problem that is just an amazing thing that we both love. Before we get into all that, I'd want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to our sponsor for today's special edition, ChargeFlow. You may or not be aware, but every year there are $31 billion in lost revenue to e-commerce companies because of chargebacks. And some of the things that make chargebacks really, really difficult is that most brands don't have a process. They don't understand how to deal with alerts. They don't understand that there are pre-chargeback states that they can use to challenge those things. It's essentially like this whole little caveat of payments that are difficult for brands to get into and understand what to do. Well, that screams SaaS solution. If you hear all those problems I listed, and ChargeFlow is the best in the space at this. So I'm going to have a link to their website in the show notes. Please, if you're dealing with chargebacks or are curious about what's actually going on, if chargebacks are even a problem for you, go check them out. You can get a free audit done. And the best part is they're actually going to be at Sub Summit. We're going to be there. So if you are interested in talking to them in person, you'll be able to visit their booth and learn more about them. Okay. Andriy and I connected on subscriptions a few years ago. He's one of my favorite people, just period. He's a great guy. Andriy, please tell my audience a little bit more about you, your experience, and why they should care about your opinion when it comes to subscription stuff.
Well, Matt, you're also one of my favorite people. You're one of my favorite of all time, or one people of all time. No, I'm kidding. No, it's awesome to have such a good companion and a competitor in the same way, right, in some ways, because I learned a ton from you. But to give the listeners a little bit of a background, so I started in e-commerce at Bold Commerce, which was an alma mater for many people in the e-commerce space, or at least for a ton of brands, it was an early intro into e-commerce, especially. And I branched off from there and I started the agency, Good Subscription Agency, in 2020. I just saw the gap that nobody was really servicing the subscription business model niche specifically. And it was a really different business model. And I still argue for that to this day. So, and, since we've been designing, migrating, selecting apps, building retention programs, loyalties, implementing, basically now we're shifting more into a retention for hire, essentially, where businesses hire us to tweak up, optimize, or put in place a retention platform, but we also have a subscription widget app that we've published with the years that helps people optimize their PDP without hiring a developer, just a really easy no-code solution to optimize conversions for subscribe and save prepaids, and also the agency side, obviously, where we do the heavy lifting, the design, the dev, the research. Right. And I'm just a big subscription nerd. At this point, I kind of never thought that would happen, but it turns out it's one of the best business models around because it builds.
I was in shipping before subscriptions, and people are like, "How'd you get into subscriptions?" I'm like, sometimes I don't even know how I got into this, but I love it. I can't imagine going anywhere else.
It's really good. And the thing is, it incentivizes, to me, like, it incentivizes really good business practices. You need to have a good product, and I'm going to say good a couple of times here, and you need to have a good customer experience. And those are the business basics if you want to have a good, long-term, sustainable, profitable relationship with your customers, period. So that's the spiel.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody ever wants to, pay Andriy and I $500, we will show you our WhatsApp and LinkedIn DMs to hear what we really talk about
Yeah.
when it comes to subscriptions. But I'm going to say that tongue in cheek because actually that is why we are doing this podcast today.
Yeah.
We chat about this stuff all the time when new features come out, what brands are saying, what's happening. We are DMing each other. Have you tried this? What do you think? All the time. For those of you who are maybe new to me and my content, just as a quick intro, I started out also on the SaaS side at a small subscription app called QPilot. It was primarily servicing WooCommerce customers through its AutoShip Cloud plugin. Now has a Shopify integration as well, doing some fun stuff there. But same thing as Andriy, saw a gap in the space around content education. I love education. I love trying to help figure out problems and explain them to people. So subscription prescription was born from that need or that observation that what are people doing? Because oftentimes we're being sold software as a solution when in reality we have a solution that can actually already in place. And so the funny thing is we get asked, both of us get asked these questions all the time. Which app should I use? We get tagged on Twitter. We get tagged in other groups and communities around about questions like this. So it just makes sense to kind of address this kind of full on. And we have both been laughing a little bit offline. We are bound to offend some people. We are bound to sound like maybe, but I do want to point out there are, what did you say on 40 plus subscription apps on Shopify?
At least 40 plus, and 40. There are some unlisted ones.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So we can really only talk from our experience. So I've used quite a number of them. I have clients or people that I've done consulting with that are using different apps. It is rare when I get somebody who's say like a $10 million brand and says, hey, help me pick a solution. I know that is something that you do at your agency more. Typically, a lot of my clients I'm just working with what they've got unless there's a problem, and then we start looking for a new solution. So with that being said, the format for today is we're first going to talk about some platforms. We're going to go and rank them based on some different attributes. We're going to give our top threes with some potential honorable mentions. And then we're going to spend some time on migrations because this is a huge problem that we both see in the space. Brands losing months and months of time, revenue because the migration wasn't handled well or there was a complication that somebody didn't quite handle correctly. So we've both been on both sides of that equation. Okay, so let's start out with a softball question. Which is the best app overall? No, I'm just kidding. How would you rank the best apps for starters? So, and we would define starters. I define starters as somebody who's fairly new to e-commerce or well below $1 million in revenue. So enough where you feel like you're counting pennies when it comes to the cost of an app install.
Yeah.
What are the best subscription apps for somebody starting out?
Yeah. And to me, the starter, I also, just to define that category even further, I would say if you have under 1,000 subscribers, you should be thinking about you're in a starter app platform. It's someone.
See, I would say even lower than that. I'd say below 250 or 300.
Actually, you know what? In reality, I'd probably say
once you get to 500, you should be
really okay to invest some money into a better platform. Yeah, you know what? Let's rework that. But
okay. And this isn't going to be our whole podcast. One of us saying something and us agreeing or disagreeing. So anyway.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, we're also going to have some different opinions, which is actually why we got together.
Yeah.
So okay. So for me, personal favorites, and this is a while ago, I did play around with a number of because an even bigger preface on the app research process. App procurement and migrations is something we charge for as a service. So brands hire us to do research on the best fit and pick top three, compare them and contrast, and then basically project manage a turnkey migration from one to the other. Right. So at one point, I had to install 30 plus apps just to see what's going on in the space. So for me, the best starters, and all of these three I have actually spent quite a good amount of time with, and I'm comfortable recommending all three. But I would say for me, the best starter are RecurPay, Subify, and the top one for me, I believe, and strongly in Appstel right now. And this is, again, we also have to preface that this is the beginning of summer of 2024. All of these features are going to change, but it's hard to do evergreen content on software as a service.
Yep.
But so that's what I would say my top three. I'll let you chip in, obviously, and then maybe we talk about why.
Yeah, I'd say I mean I'll dive right in. I agree with that list. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't I've seen demos of both Recur Pay and Subify. I've seen them in
Mm-hmm.
practice. I haven't worked with clients using them, but I have done with Appstle.
Mm-hmm.
Appstle is kind of like I'd say the sneaky app in the space. I was kind of surprised. I don't know if you saw Jeremy Horowitz's post recently about Shopify app installs.
Mm-hmm.
Appstle actually has a lot of Shopify
Shopify Plus.
Plus installs
Mm-hmm.
compared to a lot of the other apps. But one of the things I just love about Appstle is just really easy to get going. It's really easy to turn on other features. The UI on the back end is maybe not quite as pretty as some of the newer apps, but I
They've
mean,
updated that, by the way.
okay, then yeah, like to me, that's like not even really a criticism because it still all works.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking about when we're weighing these, it's like ease of use, it's price. App still has a lot of free, like they're not charging like percentage fees and stuff at their lower tiers, so it's really easy to get started and graduate into some of the other features. And they have a really responsive team. They have a lot of people working on it. They have a ton of installs, so I definitely agree with that. I would just say like if you're looking at apps, there's always this question of if we're not sure what's going to happen, we're going to pick the app that's the minimum viable product to offer subscriptions well. That's not going to cost us an arm and a leg. If you think that subscriptions are going to be a big part of your business and you want to launch them correctly and be like really involved, I would say pay more attention to the pro list we're going to do in a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
you can usually work out some entry level deals with some of these other apps. And the pain of migrating, like if you grow within the course of a couple months from 0 to 500, 700, 800, 1,000 subscriptions, and then you want to migrate, that's another big headache. That's a bigger headache than just going back and installing it new from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. I would also, on top of the usability. So I think to me, if you're a brand that's just starting with subscriptions, or a young brand, period, usability is a key part because if you don't know how to use a tool, you're not going to use it.
Right.
So usability is big, and then all those three platforms actually have really good for the value churn prevention tools. And AppStyle even comes with a build-a-box solution and a membership
Right.
module. So there's a ton of platform depth and a lot of features. But both Subify and RecurPay, again, very easy to use, very easy to set up, and easy to basically and have a decent customer portal that allows you to collect some
And
cancellation
And
data.
Subify works on more than just physical product subscriptions. They do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of stuff within like digital subscriptions and membership access and stuff as well. It makes them
Yeah.
pretty cool.
And also support. They all have awesome
Mm-hmm.
support. So whenever
Right.
you inevitably, let's say you scale past a point and you feel like, you know what, maybe one of these $300, $400 a month, $500 a month apps start to make sense, that the pro tier we're going to talk about, all of these people are very helpful in helping you migrate to a larger app, but they're also obviously work with you if you wanted to scale on their platform still.
Right.
Support's really good overall on everybody.
Yeah. I mean, they all have really strong customer base. They all have a lot more customers than you think. Uh, and so they actually have tons of customer feedback, product led
Yeah.
growth on how they're trying to build like product
Yeah.
led features and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I've met actually, I don't think I've met with Appstill personally. I've met with RecurPay and Subify, and really liked both of them.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to talk to Appstill at some point. Okay, cool. All right. So best start, that was best starter. So now let's
Yeah.
look at best pro. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking pro subscription app, how would you define what falls into the pro tier from a business size?
So honestly, pro is like the most I'd say most well-rounded category. It's anybody who's maybe 500 subscriptions and up. It's actually this is your livelihood. This is no longer a fly-by-night operation that you're running on as your brand. You need a reliable tool. You need something that you can build that will scale with your business very handily. And can scale with you to 50, $100 million in ARR. It's not something you'll ever run into. It's like it just can't keep up with our
Right.
enterprise demands. So that's what I would say pro means to me. It's a very broad category, but a lot of these tools, I would almost, for a lot of brands, I would almost recommend starting with a pro plan if you can invest the
Right.
$300, $400, $500 a month. right away, just because the migration later is not you don't have to think about migrating to a bigger app later. And also because you're starting with all of the proper, I would say, all of the best practices best practice features for retention and acquisition right off the hop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we could say pros like, anywhere up to even 100 million in revenue,
Yeah,
that these apps will all support you very, very well. I think they're also building out features very, very quickly. Some of the ones we're going to mention they're all in fierce competition with each other. So they're trying to
yeah.
figure out like the best pricing
And we're
models, like
and
the
we're
best
friends
features.
with
Yeah.
everybody at
Yeah,
every
and we're friends
company.
with all of them. So that's
Yeah.
that's the thing. If we haven't used your app yet and you'd like us to, please reach out to me or Andriy, and we'd be happy to
Yeah.
take a look at it. Okay, I will lead with this. The funny thing is we're very much in agreement on quite a bit of these things, but I will lead with I think that in no particular order, my top three would be Stay, Loop, and then potentially either Skio or Smarter as a third. I think Skio is farther along from a feature set, but Smarter has some interesting things on the membership side. I have left out intentionally Recharge, which I'm going to qualify in a minute, but I want to hear your top three from you.
Okay. So in that case, I would put. I'm very very close with you. I would also put in no particular order Loop, Stay, and Recharge. I would. Okay, actually, I would actually. If I had to exclude Recharge, I'm curious why. But I.
Oh no, you
I
don't
would,
have to exclude Recharge. I'm
yeah,
going to tell you
I
why I
would put
excluded them in a
Recharge
second.
in the top three for best overall, hands down. I would put Recharge, Stay, and Loop. Honorable mention, I shout out Smarter and Atomic and Skio too. And it's hard because this segment is so competitive.
It's really
There's
honestly, it's really hard to go wrong if you pick like if we expanded that to 5 or 6 and say, okay, Recharge, Stay, Skio, Loop, Smarter, Atomic. I don't
yeah,
see how you go wrong with any one of those
any of
6.
these. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. No, I wasn't excluding them because I think there's something wrong. I think that Recharge is certainly an enterprise platform.
yeah,
It's one of the oldest. It has the strongest footprint.
yeah.
I would say that I love everything that's rolling out. I think that giving some of the smaller apps some attention or some love is the main reason I did that, because we're going to talk about Recharge so much already and everything that it does. And if you're on subscriptions, the odds are that you're using Recharge already. I would say too, we mentioned Atomic. Atomic, we're going to talk about more too. They're a small team, but a really robust app with some amazing features. We didn't bring up Yotpo, but Yotpo, again, like we've talked offline about that before. Yotpo is fairly new to the subscription space, but I'm like, I'm. This is a little bit more about Matt's like crystal ball. They are building very quickly, and with so many other touch points between loyalty and SMS and email, there is the potential for them to transform, and reviews to transform into a full customer experience retention app. For example, Recharge is building some of that functionality, right? Like Smarter has some memberships. Other apps are building, like Stay is building this integration with Inveterate, for example. Like other apps are building these features. Yotpo has all of those features and they're adding subscriptions to the mix. So it's a little bit different, but it's also really promising. I will follow up and say, you can launch on Recharge and be just fine. The main caveat I have on that is if you're in the 5 to 10, $15 million range from a brand perspective, the support and onboarding on the other apps we mentioned, the Stay, Skio, Loops of the world, are going to be a lot more hands-on because you're their ICP at that size. Recharge just has so many merchants that are so big that it's difficult for them to have like really white glove onboarding for brands of all sizes. So you have to be a lot bigger to get that attention. Although, did you meet the head of customer success at ChargeX? And hear from him? Were you?
Yes.
Yeah, were we all in the same group when we were talking? Like,
Maybe
was it you?
I don't think I was part of that conversation. I did brush into. Yeah.
I heard some of the innovations and stuff they made. I was really impressed to hear about that. Their NPS
The
score,
the automated onboarding that they're doing, and the self-serve onboarding that they're doing now.
Well, and their ability to answer tickets more is kind of what I'm thinking about.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
Self-service onboarding makes me always a little bit nervous, but there's their ability to handle and process tickets. And when the head of customer success says, every quarter I target my number one ticket response and I send it to my engineering team and tell them to automate and fix this problem. That gives me some
That's
profit.
cool.
Anyway, okay. So we've talked about, break down what you like. Let's pick the 3 or whatever you mentioned, or maybe 4, because I've just talked about recharge a ton. What do you like? Why should people look at those as options?
So whenever I look at, this is my kind of internal process to try to make sense of all of these options. So I look at basically 3-4 different categories. One is the subscriber acquisition features. What does that mean? That means a build-a-box, that means gifting, that means how robust can your app be in acquiring new subscribers? So obviously, subscribe and save is a no-brainer. And also the follow-up question is more not do you do subscribe and save, is does your app offer, how robust is that subscribe and save? So can you do tiered discounts? Can you do deeper discounts or sequential discounts? So order 3 discount is 20% now, 15% extra on order 5 and whatever. So that's the subscribe and save piece. Gifting, build-a-box, memberships, all of that falls into kind of the acquisition features. And I think all of these apps do a fantastic job. They all have everything that I just mentioned. So it's and that kind of what sets them apart from everybody else on the acquisition side. It's the same thing then on the retention side. So do you have so surprise and delight flows? So Loop has their Loop flows, which are surprise and delight way to create a post-purchase experience that is obviously, surprise and delight. And it's good for retention to build a personalized retention funnel.
And you see the milestones in the portal, which is something I really love about their app too. Like if you know that at month 3 you're getting a gift, it shows you that month 3 you have that gift coming.
These teasers are really good, and you can pass those teasers to Klaviyo, and you can tease that in upcoming orders. So they've really thought it through, and they were actually one of the first. Stay's retention engine was also, or not retention engine, but retention experience. Oh my goodness, what's the name for this thing?
Well, the problem is they were retection, and then they
were
and retention engine is what they bought. But yeah,
the retention engine experience. They bought it, but they have the retention experience engine, right?
Yes,
there we go. And that thing also allows you to split test and A/B test. So the only thing is, I don't believe Loop has A/B testing into their flows. I don't believe so, but both Stay and
I think they're rolling that out from.
I bet, and that's again preface. This is this time.
By the way, this content might be irrelevant 3 weeks from now when everybody rolls out new feature sets. Yeah, I will say the thing I love about Stay is keep in mind like I think sometimes story it helps for context. Like Gina Pirelli and Pearson Krass, the founders of Stay AI, they founded Lunar Solar Group, which is a retention marketing agency. So they understand retention marketing, email offers, all that stuff, and that's how they built the platform. They have some amazing tools to do that as well.
Yeah. So, and I believe they were the first ones to allow A/B testing of offers, which is again because they come from this extensive agency background. You can't just make promises and tactics and be like, "Well, just offer free gifts on order 3, and it's all good." And it's like, well, does it actually improve retention, or does it just eat into your profits? So there's that. And then Recharge again comes in now with this massive new suite of tools they rolled out over the last 6 months. Really put the pedal to the metal. And these new Recharge flows, although I'll say this to anyone's face, is that there's a couple of half-baked features around there. And I think because that rollout, because they're moving, I've talked to their head of product, Jason, and great guy, and his take is we want to roll things out quickly to get them out and into people's hands and then see how people use them and then kind of iterate in version 2. And that's what I would argue. And that's
they could do A/B testing on cancellation flows. It's still a little bit it still takes a little bit while to set up, but it still can work, right? You can do the A/B testing on the cancellation stuff. They have a ton more features too. On your okay, right. And then your ability to customize cancellation the cancellation experience and stuff. There's a lot more there. Loop and Stay and Skeel actually make that kind of easy already. The feature I'd like to see in addition, not just to A/B testing, but is to understand lift, meaning if I'm going to give 10% off to an entire cohort of subscribers, what is the cost of that 10% versus the ROI or the lift that I got from doing that? So if retention bump, I get a 5% retention bump on a 10% off discount, but the 10% off doesn't get paid for, right, by
Mm-hmm.
that. Like
Yeah.
that might be a little bit harder to calculate, like understanding contribution margin and stuff like that. But that's the question that all my clients are wondering is like, why, if I do this, is it going to actually make me more money, or is it?
Am I incentivizing people who would have? Yeah.
Right. So like, and you have to get a little bit more sophisticated LTV analytics. We shouldn't go down
Mm-hmm.
that rabbit hole just yet. But
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Anything more you want to add to any of those?
On the pro side, I mean, those to me, yeah, the acquisition tools, the LTV tools that they all have, and also the churn tools, like you mentioned. Recharge was kind of the laggard in this space until they rolled out their own cancellation. That now they've got their own better dunning system. So passive and active churn both have gotten an
Right.
upgrade from Recharge, which put them basically, I would say, on par with Stay and with Loop. Um, I would also argue analytics are really important now for
Yeah,
everybody.
that's what I was
And
going to ask you about
Recharge,
next.
again, analytics, they really, I mean, and I know that some people have made posts about that Recharge stole analytics from Stay. And I don't know if you've seen this,
Yeah, I
but
have.
anyway, yeah. So, but the point is, as a business owner, things that I look at all the time is I look at data, and that's what I care about. And I told this to Recharge product team many times, and their old analytics really were terrible because it took forever and they were hardly usable. And so this new approach of data first for them, which I really think is a really strong strategy,
Right.
given that they have 100 million end users
Yep.
to collect data from, they can really be the data
Oh,
first, smartest
that
platform.
benchmark stuff they showed, I was just like, oh, geez, I know so many people that have been killing to try to offer something like that.
Yeah, you know
Yeah,
what? I'm not that gung ho about the benchmarks. I'll be honest.
okay, I'm not. So the funny thing is I'm not either. Like, I don't look at benchmarks. Like if I work with a client, I see their retention. I'm like, okay, that's good compared to other brands I've seen that's bad to
Yeah,
others. But like, let's understand why that's happening for you and make it
mm-hmm.
better, right? It doesn't
Exactly.
matter. Like you could be above average, it could still be better. But
Yeah,
every founder on the planet wants to know. That's what they ask when you
it's
look at their
true.
churn. They're like, okay, how does this compare to everybody else? They want to be
It's
benchmarked. The reason I like it, the main reason I was excited about that feature was being able to understand that you're in a downturn as an aggregate compared to what your actual program
mm-hmm.
is seeing. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like if I have a dip in churn and I scramble to evaluate my offers and emails and all this stuff, but I can see that from like the beauty sector overall is actually down 10% that month.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I actually am doing a pretty good. So that specifically is what I was excited about from the benchmark standpoint.
That makes sense, especially around like, seasonal churn. You see a
Right.
ton of spring churn post BFCM,
Right.
post Christmas sales. And every single brand I kind of be like, especially this happens. You onboard a new brand because they start something, they start new agency work in January because, they just got through their
Right.
Black Friday, Cyber Monday. They're dealing with the new partner, and then there's churn spikes, and they go like,
Right.
well, why is our churn spiking? It's like, well, it's actually across. It's just the matter of fact, everybody who's bought gifts, everybody who's bought you on sale, and now they got their second, third order, they're canceling now. So seeing that industry wide, I think is, yes, it gives people peace of mind at least.
Absolutely. Okay. Enterprise.
Okay.
Best subscription app for enterprise. I don't have top three. I only really know one, and I have plenty of reasons to dislike some of the others, but
Mm-hmm.
I haven't worked with all of them. I've only worked with Recharge at that level. And as far as I know, Recharge is that's where they crush.
Yeah.
Actually, that's where their best value proposition is. And we should qualify. Enterprise is not. Don't think about enterprise as aspirational. Like I'm going to be in 100 million plus sub brands, so I better be on Recharge. That is not what I'm saying. Is once you get to a certain size, I think BattleBox is a great example of this. Like
Mm-hmm.
BattleBox came on, they're not $100 million brand. Like they're moving that direction, but it's the ability to customize. It's the ability to control. It's the ability to have APIs that you can build off of. That's
Mm-hmm.
why Recharge wins on enterprise, is because the ability to customize is essentially endless. That's why I would say them. Now, I could say you could make the argument that several of the other app platforms can work if the like they can build a lot of that, but at scale, like it's just a little bit different. So I don't want to disqualify anybody's like, if you're a big player in the space, why you shouldn't look at somebody else. But that's
Yeah.
the reason why Recharge is number one.
Yeah. I'll basically echo everything you just said. I will also add on top of that, it's I call it gangster knows gangster. It's they work with other enterprise brands and they get how enterprise brands operate. Therefore, they have a ton more experience working with enterprise. They understand what it's like to deal with multiple departments, multiple stakeholders, what those processes and cycles are like. Um, they also understand what the legal requirements for all this stuff is. They've had to jump through all the hoops and support brands at big brands on a high level consistently for a decade now. So there, and it's not even just like, oh, our paperwork is good. It's the people, it's the account managers, it's people who have, it's internal staff that have experience of working with enterprise. Um, that's the only thing that I would say that it really has over other apps that are, again, really, really good in the pro range, the Loop, the Stay of the world. And I would argue like extensive their API docs, and I've had their developers look at basically
Yeah.
Loop, Stay, Recharge, Bold. Actually, Bold subscriptions. I'll preface that Bold has a really basic limited app. I actually put out a video review of that and that kind of ruffled some feathers because of how basic their out of the box app is. Their API interface is fantastic.
Yeah.
And their documentation, because they reworked it and they built it basically almost, let's say, for enterprise.
Right.
So, however, this is kind of they're now, well, if that's just one leg that you compete on in this space, in my mind. And out of the box is now, and if you talk to people high up in these at all these companies, they understand that yes, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, API flexibility was really important. Now, a lot of brands are looking to remigrate back to the platform. They're looking to reduce overhead. They're looking to get rid of their internal dev teams. They're looking to be as lean as possible. And that's why you see Dollar Shave Club moving from custom to Shopify and, let's say in this case, Order Groove. I'll touch Order Groove in this conversation just for the sake of, I haven't really worked with Order Groove hands-on other than a long time ago for a small kind of, I'd say, pro enterprise, pro-ish level client. And a lot of their out-of-the-box tools for app setup onboarding were pretty limited. It was clear that they were working with, much bigger brands, and they were probably dev teams that worked on top of this app. And but all I know is that this launch with Dollar Shave Club seemed to me like a budget job, that Dollar Shave Club really needed something to get done and get it over the finish line. They wanted to keep costs really low. And obviously, since they've even moved to Shopify, their Unilever sold them off. And I believe whoever bought them sold them off again. So,
which is sad because I'm a Dollar Shave Club subscriber.
yeah,
But yeah, I'd say like again, the main knock for Order Groove that I've been told from people that have used it is just that it's kind of their way or the highway. They have a system and a method for how they're going to manage subscriptions, which means there's not a ton of optional. And this is from 2 years ago. And that's one of the knocks around it. So it makes sense why somebody would want to leave custom to go to something that's a lot more controlled and tight.
Yeah.
I do love their offer that they're running on their website. If we wanted to digress into offers for a little while, trying to get
what's their offer?
It's $5. You get the blade and the set of razor. You get the handle and the set of razors and stuff for $5.
Right.
So it's a
nice.
And
they don't advertise a subscription anymore.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So enterprise, like we said, we're qualifying that one, but for everything that we know and understand about the space, that's why, we have Recharge there. I do say I try to qualify that for some people. For smaller brands, if you're getting frustrated with Recharge, like Recharge knows that, like they're trying to build out better, more features to support that. But keep in mind that 90% of their revenue are brands doing 100 million or more.
Yeah, it's brands driving, with 5,000 subscribers. That's their average brand that they work with.
Yeah. So that's why that happens. So again, that's why I mentioned, if you're looking at some of the pro stuff, if you're around 10 to 20,000 subscribers and you're looking for something a little bit more hands-on and more support and stuff like that, then that's why we mentioned some of the other pro apps that you can look at. But I would say it was kind of exciting to see like the feature war, as we've called it in the past. Like Recharge is now like wading into that So between like Recharge and Yotpo, who are two big titans in the space, there are a lot of these smaller apps that are just doing everything they can to build what people need, what people want, trying to win business. And there's a lot of competition around price. So all these apps can they know where I live really, but if you want to argue, threaten to migrate to get a lower price, you're gonna get some traction there. So I would say look at that as an option before you decide to just blow up whatever you're doing and move somewhere else.
Yeah. I think just to sandwich that thought on Recharge and migrations, our migrations off of Recharge have dropped by 60 to 70% in the last year. And that is all primarily because of these new features that they've rolled out over the last 6 months. And basically what used to happen in the past is you had a ton of these new up and coming apps that just like were super fast to develop. And they had a very robust and rich feature set, and Recharge had to basically, because of Shopify's internal API, or basically because of the Shopify API and the Shopify checkout, Recharge essentially has two apps that they have to support, and that they do. And it was a good 2 years that they had to spend to rebuild their app on Shopify's checkout, and there's technical reasons why that was with variants, and I was explained this, and I don't really get it, but I understand that it was painful, and they have to have two apps. And it took them 2 full years of basically running with one leg tied to another to catch up to all of these new apps, right? And now they finally broke free, and now they're actually in full stride, and they're shipping new features because they built a feature parity. They can easily migrate everybody who's on the old app to the new Shopify checkout app. And
I don't know about easily. That's still happening. It's still a lot of them are in progress, and there is a little bit of it's a little nebulous if people are going to make it over in time for the deadline.
I would say this: I would argue that the recharge on Shopify is the easiest migration you can do.
Okay,
it's easier than migrating from Recharge to something else, because that process has been done more than any other migration process, and also you are pretty much feature parodying everything. Yes, there's payment gateway issues. There's prepaid, some issues around order, post-purchase, like kind of Shopify related ones. But you're going to have all of those same issues on any other platform, pretty much.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited actually to see Recharge finally, roll out a lot of new innovative, or start to roll out a lot of new innovative stuff. And it's still, even after all of that, it's so freaking close between all of these apps. It's literally marginally, like every quarter, you could say it's like, well, who has the best dunning setup? And it's almost honestly, every couple of months it changes.
So much of what I do, and I know you do the same thing, is like trying to help a business identify what's the most important thing, right? Like, do you really, is Build-A-Box your leader? Like, is it like a retention tool that's your leader? Like, are you really heavy on Klaviyo and need a stronger Klaviyo? Like, because depending on the app, there's different flows that integrate well or not. I mean, I think Stay and Loop probably have the best Klaviyo integration that I've seen. Skio, I haven't seen it live in action just yet, but they're supposed to be pretty good too. And Recharge is going to catch up. Like there's a few dynamic things that aren't getting past in there yet. But yeah, okay. Let's segue real quick.
Now that we upset everybody.
Now that we upset everybody.
No, I think we did a good job.
I think again, just if you're evaluating platforms, know your own business really, really well. Know what motivates people. Like as a perfect example, if membership is a really huge piece of your subscription experience, look at apps that either have membership feature sets or really, really tight feature or membership integrations, right? That's just as an example. Okay, we have a few different other categories. Instead of necessarily getting into all three for all of them, how about we just go through a couple of things, maybe an app or two that you really like for some of these different experiences, if it's possible, and I'll do the same, because I do want to try to keep this under an hour and also talk about migration. So we'll give ourselves like 6 or 7 more minutes on this stuff. So best app for subscription boxes, prepaid or otherwise.
Yeah. I would argue it's a tough one. I think for me, Loop is one of the better ones. I think Recharge is very close with them, and everyone's for prepaids. Prepaids are such a big important piece for subscription boxes, just because it's like an instant LTV explosion as soon as you get somebody to prepay for a year. If you're a subscription box, your quarterly or a monthly subscription box of stuff, call it that. And everybody struggled to build a really good prepaid solution because of Shopify's limitations for a long time. And now we're finally seeing good upsells that are like, it was really tough to upsell on a prepaid plan without making it a manual process. Literally, some of the best brands are relying on customer support, going in, canceling one plan, upgrading somebody to another plan. And that, like, as far as I know, John Roman with BattleBox, that's something they're still doing to this day manual. Because there's a bunch of technical limitations from what I understand with prepaid. Finally, we're seeing people like both Loop and Recharge are building tools to automate that and build that into flows where you can automate a prepaid upsell. And they handle that really, really well. And that's why I gravitate toward those two.
Yeah, that's something I'm excited to see more of too. Like, if you hit 4, 5, 6 months on a subscription, give somebody the option to prepay, give them a special discount or a gift. Mm-hmm. Great for retention and getting cash back sooner. Mm-hmm. Okay, subscribe and save. Typically, like our typical subscribe and save replenishment models.
Yeah.
So looking through tier discounts, like portals, upsells, like what are some of the features and stuff that you really like in that space?
Yeah. So for here, I think I'd say also top 3 in no particular order. I'd say Stay, Loop, and Skio. Both of these on the subscribe and save side, they have so they have a tier discount, which that's the only reason why Recharge is not on this list is you can't create a discount on orders 2 or 3 or 5 that is separate. Or that is basically, you can basically build those in on all of those Skio, Stay,
yeah,
and
in fact,
Loop.
they just rolled out progressive or bundle discounts. Like the more products you add, the discount can be bigger. But that's at the point of purchase.
Yeah. And I think also for subscribe and save, the customer lifetime value tools like upsell, surprise, and delight flows are all really, really big. And both all Skio, Stay, and Loop have a really, really good piece, basically all toolkit for that. Same thing with churn.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Build a box. Everybody says they have Build a box.
Yes.
It's all over the place. I will lead with what I know to be both of our favorites, which is, I think, this is one of the easiest things to say out there. The best Build a box experience is Atomic. Yeah. They have the best program. That is what they built. That is like essentially the entire genesis of their entire subscription app experience is Build a box. They are, I think, number 1 in that. Anything you want to add or honorable mentions?
I would say honorable mention, I would put Loop up there as well. Right. Loop's Build a box. And this is what blows my mind with Loop overall is just the speed that they can roll these things out and do a really, really darn good job at them.
They just released a new feature while we were talking. Like that's how.
Yeah, they definitely did. And they are very aggressive. However, so I really love Atomic, and we've onboarded a number of people onto Atomic's Build a box, particularly because they have, and I think it really comes. Their app is to me, from a user interface and from a usability standpoint, it's the best, most polished app. And it's all comes down to their team is super senior product people. And they understand UX at probably the people there get how business owners think and use their app, and they pay close attention, and they have a ton of past product experience. So their app is extremely usable, and which means that their customer portal is extremely usable. Their Build-A-Box is really easy to set up. Also, the robustness of the flexibility of their Build-A-Box is also really good as well. So, the only knock on them was their analytics, and they are rolling into, and then basically because they integrated into Peel's analytics, and Peel just obviously the news came out that Peel just got acquired by Shopify. That's where we haven't really seen much news from Peel over the last 6 months. So to me, Atomic's Build-A-Box is still the staple.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Memberships.
Yeah, I think memberships to me, same thing, fall into very similar category as prepaids because you have, or as a box of stuff or a bit or a subscription box, because a lot of subscription box companies think of their customer base as a membership.
Right.
But so to me, and um, Loop is probably, and Recharge would be both up there. I would argue Loop a little better because they do have better customer tagging. I know that, I'll be honest, I haven't really played around with Smarter's built-in membership platform, and but
I do
to
like
me, it's
I
really
do
down
like
to tagging. And,
Smarter's like that. That is, I would
Mhm,
say, one of their strengths. Smarter strengths is the membership
mhm.
piece, like the ability to
Okay.
like, have like loyalty or points and like referral
Hmm.
stuff integrated into the portal.
Hmm.
Um, Being able to like do certain special membership features. Um, while it's not necessarily native, I'll definitely give a shout out to, I think, because I'm a big fan of Inveterate from a membership standpoint. So Stay
Hmm.
AI and Inveterate have a really tight integration, which kind of comes back to this argument of like, do you want the app to build all the features you need, or do you want to integrate the different apps that you like using? So but it, I mean, it really does depend on like what you're trying to do. Are you trying to like offer um, exclusive content, exclusive access to products,
Yeah.
um, right? Like cashback, or if we're the blurring the line between membership and loyalty, and like certain
Hmm.
types of loyalty points and things like that, it does get a little
Hmm.
bit mixed.
Yeah. For us, it's just, well, the membership piece has always been something that we just implemented as an agency without needing to go with an app, because a lot of that is customer status, subscription status determined, and all of that gets passed on to Shopify's account info and account
As a tag,
tagging.
right? Yep.
Yeah, so we could build a lot of that internally. So we never really needed to, for example, like I wouldn't recommend migrating to a different app because they have some kind of membership tool. It's probably easier to just build an internal membership tagging
Right.
tool rather than migrate to somebody because of membership. But if you're starting from scratch, going with somebody who has a membership tool already is a good way.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So we've done a ton of app stuff. We could talk about this all day long. Again, I
Yeah.
just want to mention, if anybody out there listening has questions or feedback, or if you're in from one of these apps and you want to share some new features or things you're working on, um, please feel free to send us an email or a DM about that as well.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk migrations.
Let's do
What makes migrations really, really scary? What makes them
it.
technically like, you'd think it'd be easy. It's Shopify, or it's like unplug one thing, plug it into something else. That is not necessarily what happens. What in your experience, makes migrations difficult?
I think the biggest thing that makes migrations difficult is that everybody pretends like it's an easy thing, and that it's a plug and play thing, and then the expectations and the reality hit you in the face.
Right.
And there are a lot of really good, there's good stories of both subscription or migrations going well
Going
and
really well.
migrations
Yeah,
going absolutely poorly. And the thing is, the only way you can predict how yours is going to go is how much prep work you're going to do for it and how much
exactly.
testing you're going to do for
Yeah, I
that.
should have qualified this by saying, if you're a brand listening to this, we are not going to tell you the best subscription app to help with migrations. We're actually going to educate you on how to do better at
Yeah,
your own migration.
yeah, yeah. So, and to me, having a process is really, really important, and doing your due diligence um, on app selection and then testing and then implementation. All of that needs to be project managed by at least one key person who
Right.
has, skin in the game to do that. So,
Yeah, a big red flag is if your subscription app tells you this is something super easy, it'll usually take 1 to 2 weeks and we do it all for you.
mhm,
That's a red flag. If they're
yeah,
not stating that they are testing, that they are doing migrating a portion
a
of your
batch.
subscribers at a certain time, and that they're requesting that you go in and validate that information to make sure that it's correct so that they can complete the migration,
Hmm.
that has to be part of the process, right? Because
Hmm.
you need to be involved. essentially think of it like this. If you have 10,000 subscribers, we're going to move over a couple hundred. We're going to have you go look and verify that the products are correct from the old one to the new one. The pricing is correct. The customer information is correct. Like the frequencies and stuff. We're making sure that all those different pieces are correct in those sample sets. So it can take you a little bit of time to go through, and like you have to go through 100 different orders, for example, to try to make sure that's happening. The subscription apps are all the best intention. There's process. Shopify is trying to like standardize this as much as possible with the subscription API and how they manage what's called a subscription contract within their system. That being said, there's still lots of things, plenty of things that can go wrong, or they're talking like SKU variances, like prepaids, right? Like just something maybe a little bit like wonky in how you set up your product in the first place. So being able to test those before the full migration happens, because in theory, it's just a question of mapping fields. Yeah. So they're going to go in and say, this field is this field in our system. This field is this field in our system. This field is this field in our system. And sometimes what you have in your field does not align with what they're expecting. And they don't know that because they don't know your business as well as you do.
Yeah. And I mean, not to oversimplify, but it's exactly like you said, it's if you've ever exported something from one platform as a CSV file into another platform as a CSV file, it's basically how this works. And you know, except it's with credit card info and with frequencies and SKUs and products. The complications we have seen, typically it's like to be weary of or be careful around and plan a little more proactively. And specifically, I'll say test. And when I say test is all of these apps will give you access to their features for free. You can set them up on your store. They'll be happy to waive fees and basically mimic a subscription order on the new app and look at how the SKUs are going to be handled. For example, two often complications we see is build a box, how SKUs are built within a build a box, and how all the subsequent all the subsequent products are broken into. Is it one master SKU? Is it 7 different SKUs for every box? And as well as prepaids. We've seen different apps handle prepaids differently. And I've seen migrations stall and companies run 2 subscription apps on their site for, I shouldn't say years, for months because they didn't test this one particular piece prior to migrating, and then had to be stuck between like, well, we already launched with this app, so and they were basically running 2 apps, and if app companies understand these things, they'll play with you as best as they can, but it happens. It happens. So,
absolutely cool. All right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap up. Not that we haven't covered enough already. As a quick shout out, Andriy, how can people get in touch with you? I know it's goodsubscriptionagency.com.
Goodsubscription.agency. I have to have that.
Good subscription. Okay, so
URL.
let's just fix that. Okay.
Yeah.
Andriy, how can people get in touch with you? I know that it's goodsubscription.agency for your website, but tell people a little bit more about, again, who you work with and how they can get in contact with you. And we'll drop a link to his website in the show notes.
I help brands in the area of, say, $1 million to $50 million in ARR improve their retention, build a retention strategy that actually works for your subscriptions, and also implement that strategy into your design of the website, your customer portal, your account pages, and email marketing. So we have a Strikeforce team that helps you get all of that up and running in a couple of months. And we also have a subscription app, which is it's a companion app. It's not to compete with any of these. It's literally to simplify conversions, and it only replaces the subscription widget on your product page.
It makes styling and control a lot easier. Yeah,
it's better converting, easier to style, make it look on brand, make it look good. So that's that. And fundamentally, if you want to just ping me and talk about subscriptions, I'm basically a subscription nerd at this point, certified. Right. Find me on LinkedIn. And it's Andriy Rudnyk. And yeah, I'm sure Matt will have all the links.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we mentioned that we are competitors. We are in the sense of that we do like work with a lot of similar sounding customers. We work in a little bit of different ways. Andriy certainly has a lot more developers and like people on his team to go do the work. Whereas I generally mostly strategy and a little bit of implementation. But we are good friends. And so you can ask me for a reference to Andriy or ask Andriy for a reference to me. We'll both happily recommend the other. So, and as a final wrap up, again, want to give a shout out to this special doses sponsor, ChargeFlow. If you are dealing with chargebacks, which if you're in e-commerce, you are, if you're trying to get a better handle on chargebacks or try to see how you can get more of that revenue back and win on chargebacks, then please check out ChargeFlow. And that's it for this week's special dose. I hope to see or hear from all of you at Sub Summit in Dallas coming up in a couple of weeks. And we'll stay tuned for next week. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe so that you can get notified when new episodes come out each week on Tuesdays.